Hi, everyone. Welcome to Between Two Coaches. We're on a mission to make fitness more human, snark sold separately. I'm Coach Amanda, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host,
Coach Nick. And welcome, everyone. And we have a special guest today. Let's welcome Stephanie Roth-Goldberg, whose name I hopefully said right because I definitely screwed it up last time we had a guest.
You did. Thanks.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for joining us. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. We're going to have a great episode. We are going to talk about obsession, disordered behaviors, dependency with exercise. We're going to give out some listener love. We are going to air some grievances, of course, and who knows what else.
So before we get into today's episode, we're going to run through our normal shtick, guys, as Coach Nick shared. But I did want to make sure Stephanie had a chance to introduce herself to the pod.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Roth-Goldberg. I am a psychotherapist in New York and New Jersey. I specialize in eating disorders, but more specifically eating disorders among athletes. I myself am a runner, a triathlete who's somewhat in retirement due to the age of my children. Yeah, that's the shortest intro I'm going to give, but there you have it.
I'm certain we'll learn more about what you do and later on the pod. But first, we got to talk about Nick's solo dad weekend.
Ooh, that was something.
And I see a note on the shared Google Doc that you would like to celebrate your wedding dance moves.
Oh, I would. They were fire. I don't know if anyone saw. So my last cousin got married. I remember I was going up to Jersey and I told you that was super fun. And then I didn't visit you and you were mad. But we went.
Who, me?
Yeah, you. The last.
I was mad. Stephanie, you're in Jersey.
Yeah, I'm in Montclair.
Yeah.
So Stephanie's mad too. She didn't know she had to be mad, but she's mad now.
But so went to my cousin's wedding. I ran 18 that morning with a couple athletes, and then got in the car and passenger princessed my way up to Jersey while Kelly drove. And we went to this wedding that started at 6 p.m., which, now that I'm older, these types of late night weddings are a little crazy, but persevered and had some cocktails and some drinks, and then tore up the dance floor. And my family was shocked. They were like, "We didn't know you could dance. We didn't know how you're still dancing." So yeah, there's some videos on my Instagram, but yeah, my cousin's like 30, so like all his friends are like 30, so hung with them the whole time. So I'm super proud of my accelerated age and being able to hang until 11 p.m. and promptly fell asleep at 11:45. But yeah, we had fun.
It looks like you did, and in case the listeners have not watched you with glow sticks, I suggest that they do that because I didn't recognize you with glow sticks. It's a side of Nick I've never seen before.
Oh.
Jersey strong, keeping it strong.
Bringing back my old days, I definitely did a lot of glow stick dancing back in my 20s. I was a menace on the dance floor. But yeah, and then solo dadded up this past weekend. Kelly went away for her 40th birthday. And
happy birthday, Kelly.
Happy birthday, Kelly. And I took on the girls and we survived. Everyone's alive. We watched some Simone Biles. We crushed some Olympics and we all made it. And that was exciting. Everyone went to bed relatively on time. So, just superstar dad mode. Also really just mostly joking. Dads can easily and should be able to watch their kids solo. It's part of the job. You literally are a parent of these children and you should be able to do it. And you should get no kudos for solo dadding.
I agree.
I co-sign that. I co-sign everything Father Nick shared.
Yeah. Well, thanks. How was your week, Amanda?
It's been special. It's been a special week of a lot of lows, but we've we're going on the high. We're riding the wave of life. And a really good, what I will say is that I had a very good training week.
Hey.
And despite some of the trials and tribulations, we not only made it, but we took care of ourselves. We rested when we needed to. We kept ourselves fed. We were focused on the Olympics to feel inspired. I think I would say it was a good week. I haven't seen you in 2 weeks, Nick, because we double recorded.
I know.
So my memory shot, but all in all, I would say at least one thumb up.
Oh, right.
One thumb up.
Yeah.
Stephanie, you have any more thumbs?
I had an interesting week. I finished my EMDR certification, which is super intense.
Hey.
But also, thanks. It was like a week of not being home, and I was, as of last week, but this is no longer the case, I was training for a fall marathon that I wasn't feeling, but so I was trying to squeeze that in when I was like, you know what? I'm just not going to run a marathon this year or this fall. And I felt like it relieved everything that was stressing me out. So this week is a better week.
Yeah, we love balancing life.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you if anyone listening says, what is EDMR?
EMDR.
Oh, see, that's why we need the specialist on.
EMDR is a specific modality of therapy. It's used for treating trauma. However, most of the research is around PTSD, but I got certified in it to help treat eating disorders, but I've also been doing it on some sports performance clients, which has been awesome. And it's a modality. So there are steps that you take, which is different than my typical way of doing therapy. But I'm really happy to have it in my toolbox. I think it is incredible how well it works. And it can be a short-term treatment, which is cool too. So.
Love it. We love adding tools to the toolbox.
Yeah.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice. All right. So everyone, I think we took care of ourselves this week, guys. High five to us.
We did it.
We did that. All right. I'm going to share a quick review. Love, love, love your podcast. This quote unquote Susie never runs with stress fractures, never uses butter as biofreeze. This Susie believes rest is training and runs for health versus performance. I propose you use names like Gertrude, Jane, Philomena, or Karen. Keep up the great topics, the ones a lot of athletes do not want to hear but are actual facts. Looking forward to listening to more and more of your advice, humor, and wisdom. Run like the wind. Oh, what a great review.
Thank you. That was from Buy Me a Coffee. So thank you again so much.
Oh, yes. And thank you so much for supporting us on Buy Me a Coffee. You can support us there, and you can also support us by sharing this podcast with a friend, maybe two friends if you have two.
Yeah.
And you can leave us a 5-star review, specifically a 5-star review over at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen or watch our podcast. And I think this leads us to Nick's grievance. Oof. Nick, please.
I'm grieving. I may have shared this on my Instagram, and I am grieving about my daughter who starts cheer today. She is 7.
Aww.
She's in 8U cheer. And I will preface this. I'll start with the good. I love that she does cheer. I love that she's part of a team. I love that she's they're learning routines and they're working together and they're competing, and it's super wonderful, and I love it all. And I think it's so great for someone that age to have sort of that camaraderie and like team aspect. But
you're really building this one up.
Well, I want to put the good in, because it's also crazy for a 7-year-old to have 4 days a week of practice, which is 2.5 hours of practice every day.
Oh my God.
And then that's just for August. And then it moves into season, where they also add in a Saturday and they do 2 hours of cheer at a football game, usually in 90-degree weather. And then competition season ends at the end of September, where they add in a 6-hour competition. They're not competing for 6 hours. They do one routine, but it's about 6 hours they'll spend there that day. So, it's very intense for this age. And that's where
I don't even think it's safe for a kid to be like doing the same.
So it's a lot. I grieve about this because it's just too much for this age. When you see other sports at this age, like soccer and field hockey and whatever else, and it's like 2 practices a weekend, maybe a game on the weekend. You're like, cool, that sounds normal. I could be okay with that. This seems so much extreme. I'm grieving, but also like happy she's happy, but also grieving for her childhood being lost. But it only lasts until November. So we're cheer parents. It's a lot of burden. It's a lot on the cheer family because we have long competitions and we have to be at games and like you're a part of a team. So don't miss anything, right? Because like everyone's got a spot in their team. So my grievance is that's too much for this age. She's also on rec cheer. There's an elite cheer. There's a club cheer, which are levels above this. But we're just on rec. And that's the commitment we're signing up for. So I'm grieving.
No, I'm with Stephanie on this one. This sounds like it's a lot mentally, physically, emotionally on the little one. That's very. Who creates this schedule? Like who is in charge here?
I don't know, but it's like it's not even like it seems all rec teams in this area. Some team I think does 5 days a week. So like this is like lesser than others. I don't know. It's a lot. So my grievance is with too much for a 7-year-old. If you are in high school or like at that age where like, yeah, of course, when I did track in high school, I practiced every day and I went to meet on weekends. I was 14, 15, 16, 17. Like that's maybe what sports included. That's what sports are at that point. Like if you're on a team for the high school, you practice every day. That's normal. It seems like a lot for a second grader.
It's also like there's so many problems with this. One, you're not supposed to specialize that young, but how do you not specialize if you have no time?
Right.
Yeah.
But also, I'm trying to think about who wrote this paper, but I once read a paper about how many hours kids should be participating in sport based on their age. And that is way too many.
Oh, it's definitely, I'm sure it's over that.
It's definitely over that.
So she at least she learns, it's not just like she's learning tumbling and she like all other skills associated with this. So she can do other things. It's not like you're just learning like basketball for 20 hours a week, which like doesn't translate much to other things. But that aside, that's my grievance. I feel like this is a lot and we're going to survive cheer season together as a family.
Yes. No, I'm happy she's happy. It's just, it's a finite amount of time. And I think there's going to just have to be special time every day. And I don't mind taking this on as TT Coach Katz, just checking in and being like, how are you doing? Did you sleep well? Are you hungry? Like, I'm thinking we got to get this team sponsored by Uncrustables or something.
She doesn't like Uncrustables. We tried this weekend. They both hated them.
What about the Bobos? Bobos are great.
Ooh, I haven't tried those yet. I keep trying new things with my kids. They love carbs, but it's like, if you add protein to the carb, one of them is like suspect about it. Like if you have an apple, they're cool. If you add peanut butter to it, she's like, nah.
It's like very low level protein.
I know. It's like peanut butter. We're not really.
It's not like she's putting a piece of grilled chicken on top of it or something. All right. No, I'm grieving with you on here. I think that was a good grievance. And Department of Education in your district, step to the front. That's that bullshit. Okay, step to the front. That's what we're grieving. Revisit the curriculum with a specialist. Good thing we have one on. So before we get into our topic, I did want to just quickly share that next week starts our first of a 4-part series called Need or Nah, where we are going over the what's a fad versus what's a fact in the fitness world, running world, sports nutrition world, and recovery world. And we will start it off by having, get ready for this, guys. You may know them, you may follow them, and their names are pretty much identical. Matt Meyer, he is a run coach, athletic trainer, and runner himself, as well as Maddie Myers, who is a personal trainer and group fitness instructor at Equinox here in New York City. We are looking forward to having them both on to help us navigate the need or nah in the fitness world.
Yeah, and they're related. So, because same last name.
As of right now, they're related.
Yes.
As of right now, they're related. So we're looking forward to having them on. That will be a 4-part series. So stay tuned for that. But before that, we got to talk to our friend, Stephanie, who you've already met. And I think a place that we wanted to start out is what the topic of our conversation is. What is exercise addiction? Some of the signs, the symptoms as it relates to our physical body, our mental state. Why don't you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. It's hard because there's no defined definition. There's lots of ideas and there's lots of people who agree on a lot of things about this, but it's not like in the DSM exercise addiction exists. But, exercise addiction is exercise that significantly, that being the key word here, interferes with your life, all aspects of your life. And often is inappropriately privileged, among other things, like skipping whatever, a family event because you need to go to the gym, being late to work so you can finish your workout. And some other aspects of it are like a severe discomfort with rest or recovery, compensatory exercise. So I've eaten and I feel full. And even though I already went to the gym, I'm going to go back to the gym. And sometimes it's exercise that's secretive. One of the things I talk about a lot with exercise addiction is that it becomes the only or sort of the primary way in which people cope with emotions. So I'm feeling really anxious or I'm feeling really angry. And rather than deal with that, I'm going to go for a run. That's the only way I'm going to regulate my mood.
The running is my therapy crowd.
The running is my therapy crowd. Yes. But then also if someone's unable to exercise, a way in which we distinguish exercise addiction is, how are you coping with that? Do you have like intense anxiety or feelings of guilt or shame? And because life does interfere often with our plans. And then also an inappropriate way of dealing with injury. So, I'm sure I haven't seen this actually in several years, but like you used to line up for a race and there'd be someone with a boot on, still trying to run that 10K.
Oh.
Yeah, I actually haven't seen that in a long time, but I have seen it. So yeah, like maintaining a rigid exercise regimen while injured, and ignoring injuries. So, yeah, that's sort of the highlight. But again, there's no real defined in the research sort of what is this versus that.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people end up making it their identity. Like, you talk about being injured and not being able to get away from it. I've seen a lot of people be injured and then like wrap their boot up in a plastic bag and go in the pool and do aqua jogging because they can't run. And and you're like, well, my goals demand it. And it's very easy because it's exercise. So then people would encourage them and be like, wow, you're so badass. Look at you. You're in the pool when you have a boot on, helping your fitness stay. And it's like, or you could just rest and like your body could recover because obviously stress was part of this injury and it's not going away. But like, because their identity is exercise, they can't not stop. And it's not to encourage them. It's more of like, hey, we need to help you have an identity that is not exercise. So you can exist in this world.
Totally. There is a biological component here though. Like if
True.
someone exercises all the time and then gets an injury, and their brain stops getting the dopamine and the endorphins and all of the chemicals it's used to getting, it does lead people to a depression, which often people are unaware of. And we don't like treat it that way unless you're working with a psychiatrist who really understands athletes and sports. So part of it is like an actual inability to cope with an injury that is both because, maybe they haven't worked through how to handle emotions, how to feel them, what to do with them, but also often there is this biochemical thing that happens where you're massively depressed because out of nowhere, you had to stop. It's like going off medication without titrating down in a way.
That's a really interesting way to talk about it. And I think that's why it makes my piss boil that exercise addiction isn't in the DSM, because it's not being treated as seriously as other mental health conditions. And as such, like what you were sharing earlier, it comes about in these seemingly harmless ways. Like people aren't recognizing it. People are identifying it as like, you're so committed, you're so tough. And they're like, you're really navigating this injury well. But I've used this phrase on the internet and people like it, but it's true. Like it just ends up looking like when I see a runner, unfortunately be put out from their sport for a period of time, they'll create either by themselves or they'll con their coach into helping them do this, creating this chaotic cross-training sandwich where it's like, all right, well, I was supposed to do a 90-minute run on Saturday. So instead, what I'm going to do is 30 minutes on the elliptical, 30 minutes walking on an incline, and then 30 minutes I'm going to take a Peloton class. And the body is really asking, is this helpful for your health, I wouldn't even look at performance. Is it helpful for your health? Or are you just like, are you just replacing a way that you were coping with something that is not really supporting your body long term, and it's definitely not supporting your health, your mental health long term. So anyway, I see this because I see this content a lot on the internet when people get injured, and oftentimes they really could. I don't think the context of what you're sharing gets shared enough, and it's actually like something is happening to this person on a biological level, which is why it's even more concerning to the individual's health.
Right. Well, and I think also when people do that with the cross-training sandwich, it's a funny term, the idea of like, well, let's also investigate why you got injured. Is it overtraining? Is your bone density low? Are you eating enough? Are you underfueling? But like, I think a lot of times people just skip that part. Right. And they're like, okay, get in the pool. You can use the elliptical, like without sort of an investigation, if you will. And not all injuries are because someone's underfueling or because someone has, an overemphasis on exercise, but it is always worth sort of investigating.
It's always more complicated. It's rarely just one thing.
Right.
Yes, it is worth investigating. And I think that just lends itself. It's really important to work with professionals who are asking. They may not be able to, a run coach or a personal trainer may not be able to help you with nutrition or the rehab that you need, but they need to be asking those questions and then help guide you to the professionals that can assist you in your recovery process. So we kind of identified that it's not officially an eating disorder. I do want to ask, based on what you know, and since you're so committed to your continuing education as a professional in your field, is there any light at the end of the tunnel that this may make it in the DSM?
Not that I'm aware of, which doesn't mean, I'm not like in on everything. I think compensatory exercise, which is like can be part of a bulimia diagnosis is getting more awareness around it. And the opposite is happening too, where it used to be like people would go into eating disorder recovery and there'd be a zero exercise sort of path, which I never was a fan of if someone doesn't need that. So I think like the tide is moving just slowly and right now in like a little bit of the opposite direction. But in terms of like people are recognizing that in eating disorder recovery, you can exercise and it's okay to do things. But I don't know that it'll make it into the DSM. I don't know that it would ever be its own diagnosis. It could perhaps be filed under like I don't know. It's not always an eating disorder, so a somatic disorder.
Absolutely. So I guess can we talk a little bit about exercise addiction, dependence on exercise, and how you see it show up in the fitness community amongst fitness enthusiasts who reach out to you for support?
And also like the difference like between exercise addiction and exercise and dependency on exercise, because I feel like that gets missed up a lot in the community. Like there is a difference between the two, but we just always look at it as like, oh, you're addicted to exercise, that's fine. Like you're exercising.
Right. Like that's a healthy addiction. It's like something people say a lot. Yes. It's hard. A lot of times those two words are used interchangeably. We could say that like in general, dependence versus addiction is a more serious presentation that often requires a more intense level of intervention than dependence, which is true sort of across the board if we were talking about addiction of anything versus dependence. Dependence, like we could say dependence might lead to an injury, like an overuse injury, and exercise addiction perhaps is like there's a complete disregard for one's physical well-being. It's that part gets skipped. It's like, again, I'm just thinking it's like a more intense presentation, a more severe presentation of the same core thing. So like dependency, often you can manage it through changes, perhaps like a more supportive team of experts, coaches, dietitians, therapists, or maybe you don't even need all of that. Whereas exercise addiction, you definitely would need a team and you would need probably, therapy, probably a full sort of rest, like a full break, as opposed to just a little bit of a change in frequency.
What's strange is like I find if I ever say, hey, like people, you might be dependent on exercise or might have a dependency towards exercise versus like telling people, oh, you're addicted to exercise. People are much more offended, taken back by being, oh, I'm not dependent on that. I don't need it. But like you say, you're addicted. So like you said earlier, like, oh, well, that's healthy. I'm addicted to something healthy, so I'm great. So people are much more upset about ever being considered dependent on exercise as needing it versus like the understanding of addiction towards it being like, well, who cares? I work out every day. I should. It's the greatest thing for me. It's changed my life forever. I'm better now. So like as a community, I always find it strange how like much more offended they are by dependent.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I could see someone feeling a certain way about that word, dependent. But I think exercise addiction does have a little bit of a like, that's great, and there's so many stories in runner's world all the time. Like, oh, which is not a bad thing, right? Like I was a heroin addict and then I found running. I was an alcoholic and now I run. And not say that all those people are addicted to it, but I think there is an idea like, well, this is so much healthier. This is a healthy thing. So
yeah, we spoke about that last week. It's like they call it and you can correct me if I'm wrong, in the recovery space, it's like addiction replacement.
Yeah.
Where it can, I am somebody who has a background of being in the rooms and when I say the rooms in anonymous meetings, and that is a conversation, while keeping it anonymous, that is a conversation that comes up a lot in recovery rooms. Well, at least he's not doing this anymore. At least, and that very well is valid. That's a valid statement, right? But, and especially when you're first sober. But we should still get curious about how much of said activity we're engaging in once we've stopped a substance addiction or any addiction that is society deems less appropriate, so that's very interesting.
And I would say it's less even about how much someone is participating in it. I mean, I've done Ironman, and so we could make a case that like that's an extreme amount of time. Or we could say like how much is it interfering with their life is really perhaps the better diagnostic question.
And how they handle it when they don't have it, right? When they can't.
Yep.
Yeah, totally.
That's it.
Yeah.
Sorry to step on your toes, Amanda.
Point. No, you did it. No, that's right. I love it. Because it's a bigger conversation. It isn't about the frequency could be a part of it. But it's our relationship with it when it's not there. Yeah. And our reliance on it to exist, I also think is another part of it. So did you want to attack? Nick had, I think,
I did.
Yeah, you want to do this one?
So do you find that there are certain qualities, characteristics in people you work with that leads to more a dependent, addictive relationship with exercise?
Yeah. I mean, I think, right, there, you always hear like, and I was a triathlete for many years. So like, it is true that most triathletes are quite type A, if you will. And I think part of that is if you're going to add something in your life like that, you need to be real organized. But there is, I think, a strive for betterment, sometimes for perfectionism. I think there is something you said earlier, Nick, like an overemphasis of one's identity, and that stems from a whole lot of things that aren't always bad. Sometimes it's, we'll use your daughter for example. She does cheer through high school. She's going to identify a lot of her life as being a cheerleader. And then when people go to college and they stop playing college sports and they transfer to something like running, it becomes a big part of their identity because they replaced what was such a big part of their life, a big part of their time commitment. So some of that is also like figuring out what else they need to be focusing on as their identity, helping them form that. Because again, if you're a college athlete or a high school athlete, you spent so much of your time with your team, and that really was your identity. Like the way you group high school kids, it's like, oh, he's a football player, she's a swimmer. But so I think some of it is like an identity formation, and a lot of it is perfectionism, high achievers, for sure.
Yeah. Follow up on that, because I just thought it while we're talking. Like, so in this age of social media being what it is, do you find, or you think maybe like people seem to turn to social media sort of for that reassurance, right? Like when we used to have smaller circles of people around us and encouraging us to do things. Now it's like, oh, well, I'm doing this thing and I'm just going to post on the internet. Everyone loves it. So I got to keep doing it. I got to keep doing this because I'm getting this almost dopamine rush from like just kudos and just like encouragement of like what you're doing. Like social media feels like it's like almost can blow a lot of these things out of proportion.
Totally. Yeah. And think about if you have even a little bit of low self-esteem and then you like, to your point, you post something and you're getting all these kudos and whatever, that feels good. Why wouldn't I keep doing that? But then, also it becomes hard to know when I need to not do that as much but yeah, totally. Social media is a huge influence.
I'm going to say something controversial, but I think it's I know for the first time, I'm going to say something controversial. I think it may be doing us individually a disservice when we decide to show up on social media and identify as our sport through our handle, our Instagram handle, our TikTok handle. So something that I see is somebody will have a handle like running Amanda Katz runner.
She's the best.
Amanda runs New York. Those are all my made up Instagram handles. And Amanda has an injury, or Amanda has a time in her life where she can't run, or
just doesn't want to,
right? Or maybe I had a shitty race and I don't want to talk about it. And then the community that I've created and the identity I've created around who I am, but if my community loves me for me, maybe I don't always recognize that, but that's why they're there. What connects us maybe is running, but now I'm not showing up in the community that loves me for me. Maybe I'm even getting some messages that are like, hey, where have you been? Mm-hmm. I haven't seen you post any of your runs lately. I see that happen. I know. I see that happen a lot. And so I'd like to know both of your thoughts on identifying so closely with your sport that you're making it like your name, you know? What are your thoughts on that? And am I wrong to think it's a little bit, I mean, don't tell me I'm wrong, because I'll feel the way I feel about it. I just think that we're so much greater than that one thing that we identify with.
Go ahead, Nick.
Oh, I was going to say, well, you got to niche down, right? So people, your social media will tell you have to identify with the smallest little niche. So then you can get your audience, then you can get lots of followers, and then you can make millions, and then you can go on your vacation, right? So all kidding aside, though, I think there is this, it is tough to do that. Yes. Because you hear it all the time, like, don't diversify yourself. And so social media, like, I have a love-hate confusing relationship with it, in the sense of, like, to some people it's literally just a business and they're just on here, and even though they seem disordered or certain ways, maybe it's good for business, and maybe they do outside of this, they shut down the app and they go live their life and they're perfectly fine and healthy. I'm not saying everyone's this way, but there probably are people who can disassociate from this thing they're using just to create money, and there's a lot of people who absolutely cannot and have identified with the personality they've made. And it is runner, it is whatever, and that is their identity. And everywhere they go, they are that, right? And they talk about it so much on social media, and that now it's all they talk about outside of social media. It's become who they are and nothing else about them. And, because if their audience doesn't like it, real life people won't like it either, because this is how I get my attention. So yes, I think it does cause problems. I think if you want to be a runner, be a runner. Your name doesn't have to be associated with it, just run, but you can talk about your life. Creating a community isn't about like, I am a runner only and my running community is that. It is like, I'm a human being. I'm sharing my life on here. People get this the best, do well on social media. Like, I'm sharing in my entire life, whether you want to be here for these crazy moments where I share what I eat in a day or not, I'm going to share it because this is my life. So I agree, Amanda.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I think there's like one more complication here, which is, what about when people get sponsored and that's a big source of their income, because I'm a runner and now all these running companies are paying me for content. I have worked with a few people like that. It is really tricky. So there's also a piece that, like, there's the identity piece. How do you figure it out? And then when it becomes how you're making money online, I think it becomes even harder to disentangle, even if your name wasn't Amanda Runs the City, which
no, but I can identify that with that as a full-time fitness professional, even though I'm not, I'm not a professional athlete whose literal work is dependent on how fast she runs the 800 meter. I understand at a very, very small level what that must feel like. And I've had to personally grapple with that when I couldn't show up at my work because of my health. So I totally understand that. Yeah, it's sticky.
Yeah.
It's sticky. What else do we have for the doc? What's next?
Well, we wrote understand compulsive exercise and understand the compulsive exercise and the prevalence of eating disorders in fitness culture.
Do we have any? Yeah, any? Maybe statistics, maybe not. But is there any? Given your expertise and your practice and the people who come see you, how prevalent are eating disorders in the fitness community? More on and everything Nick said, compulsive exercise. What do you think about that?
There are definite statistics, usually, speaking of what Nick was just talking about, a little more niche than that. Like fitness community is a hard research group. So a lot of times, like there's research on how prevalent eating disorders are among runners, for example, or, I imagine among CrossFitters, there's research about that where it's more specifics of just that the sample size is, more comparable to itself. There are some definite statistics that I am sure I will recall as soon as we hang up. And the numbers are high. Both of you probably are not surprised by that. Compulsive exercise, that's interesting. I can't think of a research study off the top of my head where they specify that as much as the eating disorder statistics among athletes. Yeah. And I mean, actually, it's interesting. We talked about dependence, addiction, and compulsion's something else, actually, altogether. It's that like undeniable extreme urge to do something, whether we're talking about sort of the caricature of someone who washes their hands all the time or the person who walks up and down getting their steps in their hallway, or something like that. But it is a compulsion. Like, I cannot not do this. My whole body is screaming. My brain is telling me I need to do that, which is different than someone who's addicted to exercise.
And there are certain behaviors. I noticed this, and fun fact for those of you who may not know mine and Stephanie's relationship, but I actually met Stephanie in my spin class. So yeah. Stephanie,
what year?
So there are certain oh God, when did it was 2018 or 2019? 2018?
I don't know. I went to that gym since like 2006. So
I know.
Whenever you started.
I know you and we connected instantly. I was so glad that when we started chatting, I'm like, oh, of course, I have a real one in the room. I noticed as an instructor, it's very interesting, and and obviously in a cycling class, it's totally dark, right? Or at least where I teach, it's totally dark, and I have noticed in my time as an instructor in the 7+ years I've been teaching spin that there's a lot, almost like every couple of minutes, there are some folks who feel like they have to look at the watch. And it actually is from just observing the behavior, it actually seems like something that it's not like a casual, it's like almost they have to do it in order to proceed. When an interval is done, when a certain block of work is done, they're making sure that their heart rate doesn't I don't know what they're checking for, but it's constant. It's constant. It's more than 5 times throughout the 45-minute class. And I know I've seen this behavior also with runners when I've been in a race. So is that a behavior, or would you call that something else?
It's funny. I'm picturing I know where you teach, and I'm like, are you sure they're just not getting a whole bunch of work emails? Is my other.
That's true. That's true.
So I think if it's let's say they're checking their heart rate, for example, it's definitely, it could be compulsive, right? It's that idea of can you not do this? Or do you feel that you have sort of a choice over whether you look at your watch right now or
That's
not?
That's the question.
Because I think that when we describe a compulsion, that's kind of what it is. And sometimes people are not even aware that they're doing the thing until they're doing it.
Yes.
To be fair, I'm definitely the person, at least in the first like 3 miles of a marathon, who is constantly checking my watch because I'm like, don't go out too hard. Don't go out too hard. Stay below this.
Slow down.
And it probably does become a little compulsive because, you know, in those moments you have so much anxiety and I'm like trying to eject it somewhere. But yeah, I think that's how you would distinguish if it was a compulsion, is like, do you think you could make the choice to not do that and feel okay?
Right. Yeah. And sometimes I even like, when I see athletes struggling with workouts or pressure, like I'll even have them do a workout where they can put their watch on, maybe put tape over it, not look at splits. And then I'll have them like do the whole workout and send me a message, say how they think it went, and then look at the splits, and then send me another message to be like, okay, well, what do you think now? Do you see the splits? And it's like usually remarkable how like they'll be very down on themselves and be like, oh, I don't think I hit anything. I was pretty far off. And then they'll look and be like, oh, wow, I hit all my splits. That's crazy. Like, I don't know how that happened. It felt so slow, right? Because when you're compulsively checking, like they're not only putting all this nervous energy into it, but like, you know, they're also like obsessing about these numbers. And then like when you remove that sort of stuff and they're not have this compulsion to check, because runners literally, they'll tell me they check every like 30 seconds on like an 8-minute rep. And I'm like you're looking at watch 16 times. Like, no wonder, like that's just slowing you down alone, just looking away from running. Like, so yeah, it's interesting when you kind of remove compulsion. Like sometimes people can even excel well beyond where they think they can.
Yeah. I'd love that as an exercise.
That is a good exercise.
They don't like it. It's hard for a lot of them to do it, but they will try it.
Yeah. I couldn't be the one. It sounds so exhausting. I'm exhausted thinking about it. But I know it exists. I work with my athletes on the same thing. Go out without the watch. What am I supposed to do? You'll know what to do. Just try one time. One time, try it. Try one time. And I think that it's a practice. It's something that and then they end up liking the sport that they're in more. So we've also tricked them. We've tricked you.
Yep. All about tricking.
All about tricking. So I guess one final note that's the most important note is that if somebody listening to this feels like themselves or someone they know who's confided in them about these behaviors and beliefs around exercise, I think that's the other thing that we highlighted today. It's like, it's not just the behavior, it's the beliefs that we have about exercise. It's the beliefs that maybe even we have about our bodies. Maybe it's tied into food. Maybe it's not. If someone has a disordered relationship, or yourself has a disordered relationship with exercise, what are some next steps for that person?
It's a great question, and it's such a tough question because some sports psychologists are excellent with this, and some are really specialized in the mental performance piece. So my first answer is like, look for a sports psychologist. And
who's excellent? Like Stephanie.
Thank you. But like, make sure they've worked with this before. Now that I've been studying EMDR for the last 6-7 months, I think that's a really good modality, because something about, or someone who does somatic experiencing, because a lot of the stuff with exercise compulsion, dependence, addiction, whatever, also resides in our bodies. So it's not just like talk therapy might not be enough, because you have to get your nervous system on board to not always be moving. So that's another area to explore, is someone who does EMDR and is familiar with athletes, or somatic experiencing, where the focus is on the body, because a lot of it is like the compulsion often does come from an inability to sit still when we're talking about like exercise and running and fitness. Or there's perhaps doctors, like there's a doctor at HSS who was a lead researcher on the female triad, which is now REDS, and she's really excellent. And so she, if there's injuries happening and there's a problem in your body, which often is how people get help is like, okay, now I've had my 9th stress fracture, or, is through a sports medicine doctor who can direct them where they need to go. But I wish there was a place like, oh, this is the clinic.
No, but you touched on in the beginning, but this is what's important. You really have to get very specific about who you want on your squad to support you through your fitness journey. Whether you think that you may have a disordered relationship with exercise or not, right? So for example, we're using runners as examples, but it could also just be somebody who takes, 5 group fitness classes a week. Maybe they like cycling. Maybe they like, they like Barry's boot camp. Maybe they like HIIT classes. The team that you decide to work with should be specialized in the activities that you exist in, right? So if you are a runner, and this is something that is speaking to you, you should be hiring a specialist like Stephanie, who works with an athletic population and eating disorders, right?
Mm-hmm.
You should also be, if there's an injury involved, you should be working with a running specific physical therapist or like somebody from HSS. You should be working with a sports dietitian, not just any dietitian, right? So it's like, it's really the take home here is that you need to be your biggest advocate for yourself, and not every health professional, not every wellness professional is going to be good for your health and wellness.
Well, and I want to say also, like, all those people should be talking, like how you have a good
to
team.
each other.
Yes.
Is
that all those people are talking. And, sometimes running coaches, or I do some work with like local teams at some of the high schools and private schools, like they'll refer me people too, which is a great way, like people who are in your corner. So you should also be working with a running coach who's paying attention if you're a runner, or a CrossFit coach or a lacrosse coach, whatever, who's paying attention, like, and not just, I like your cross training sandwich.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say that too. Like, the running coach, is here on between two coaches. Like, as a running coach, you have an obligation to take care of people, right? And so it's not just, oh, you're doing 90 miles this week and I only gave you 60. Great job. Way to go. That's amazing. Oh, you did it again next week. Amazing. Oh, you're adding in extra days and extra runs. That's so cool. You are really committed, and you're like, it's your job to have those tough conversations. And if that means the athlete doesn't wants to get rid of you because you're asking them why they're doing extra runs or doing these things, so be it. But your obligation is to take care of them. It is not about your ego and how fast they'll run maybe one time because they overdo it and then they ruin their career. I'm not saying that just doing extra miles ruin your career, but that doing down this path absolutely can. And so as a running coach, you have to have the hard conversations. You have to find out why someone is doing this. Why are they adding extra runs? It's because it's really stressful to be with my kids and I just don't want to be there. I need to get out and have my time. Okay, well, we need to figure this out, because running can't be your stress release and also be the thing you're chasing your goals and you're passionate about. And, it can't be both, right? If that is the only way to get rid of stress in your life is to exercise, and also you want to chase all your goals and follow a plan, they will butt head at some point and it will end miserably. So running coaches are that link to really ask those questions, because they're the first ones that are going to see it. Like, your community could see it online, and, you'll ignore them because, they're just there to give you kudos. But if you trust someone and you pay them, you're going to listen to them much more than random people. So you have an obligation as a coach to have those conversations, ask what's going on, see if you see behaviors like this, question it, talk to them.
Amen.
Here. Did we do it?
Well, we did, but we have the secret interview question.
Oh my gosh. You know what? I can never take off again because I'm just losing.
Oh no.
Losing the episode.
Play the soundbite interview questions. We don't have a soundbite yet. We're working on it. We're new.
Happy birthday to you. It's just a random soundbite. All right. Why don't you kick us off, Nick? You have the interview questions in front of you. Go for the goals.
Yes, I'm on it. All right.
Simone.
So So Stephanie, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Like in general?
Yeah, anything.
So broad. Wow. That's a great question. I feel like the thing that's like coming to mind, which might not be a piece of advice, like lately I've been like, let it go, like all of the things, like try not, best piece of advice I don't know. Probably never stop learning. My mom used to always say, like, any education is a good education, even if you become disinterested in that thing.
I love that.
That is
That's
a good piece
one.
of advice. Yeah.
You should always be learning.
Forever a learner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. What's one thing that people are generally surprised to find out about you?
Oh God, I'm never good at these like icebreaker kind of questions. Being an Iron Man is usually like the one I keep in my back pocket, which isn't relevant here. Oh gosh, I have no idea. I don't know.
We stumped her.
I feel so boring. Yeah.
All right, Amanda. Just
is there like some? Is there something? No, I'm just. You want me to make something up about her? I can do that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That she played cricket from ages 7 to 12.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Oh, I did initially go to college to study photography. I do feel like people are surprised.
Oh.
There you go. All right.
Yeah.
That's surprising.
All right. So you can hire Stephanie as your psychotherapist, and she's also taking photography clients.
Yeah, for weddings.
And it's funny because my husband takes significantly better pictures than me, and now I'm always like, you just do it. You just like just do it. I don't even bother anymore. So, which may be why it would be shocking to people.
Well, we love it. I love that you played cricket and that you went to college for photography. Those are both very surprising things.
So interesting. I'm shocked.
Question the third.
No.
What's something you wish more people understood about your industry, your specialty?
It's funny, I just went on like a whole rant about this. Reminds me of your grievance thing. That people are specialized. And if you're looking for a specialist, you should really look at what their training is, and you can talk to people about it. That's like a long-winded answer, but like I recently ran into a friend and she was talking about IFS, which is a different kind of therapy. And I was like, oh, I didn't know you got trained in IFS. And she said, well, it's like I'm level 2 trained. And I was like, what does that mean? She's like, well, my therapist is an IFS therapist and I've read the book. And then I was like, well, that is not the same.
Oh.
So she's like an Instagram run coach.
Totally. But on her website, and then I went to her website because I am just that person. It says like IFS.
That bitch.
Yeah. It says like IFS informed. And I was like, wow, if I was a client, like that's so misleading. So I think what I wish people could look for words that mean things like informed. Sure, that means something, but it's not the same as like certified or trained, I guess is a different word. Because I think now there's so many therapeutic modalities and people read a book or just start an Instagram account and become an expert. And,
well,
they're not.
True. And thanks to this, I'm now IFS informed. So
I am EMFGHI informed because I know Stephanie, and Stephanie just got trained in ABCDEFG.
Right. We know how this friendship will develop. Or Amanda.
Wow, this is incredible.
Yeah.
This is incredible. That's a really good one, and I think that is something that a lot of people can relate to who are credentialed in their specialty, especially in this day and age.
Totally.
Great answers all around. You are a star cricket player, Stephanie. If tell people where they can find you, where they can hire you, how they can connect with you.
I think the easiest is Instagram, although I'm on a little bit of I'm with you, Nick. I'm like, I don't want to do this. Like I have like a conflicting. So,
I want to do this.
But Embodied Psychotherapist on Instagram. And from there is my website. Yeah. And then I am working on launching a newsletter.
Oh,
So hopefully by September 1, it will be out.
that's
I
awesome.
have the format made. Yeah. So, but all of that, you can follow on Instagram and then sign up and follow me there. Get in touch.
We love it. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. And we hope that you enjoyed this episode. Stephanie, thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank
you
so much.
We can't wait to harass you to get on the pod again. You can reach out to us or Stephanie at any time. You can reach out to us at Between Two Coaches. That's TWOcoaches@gmail.com. You can reach out to myself or Nick on our individual Instagrams. And thanks again, everyone. We will see you next time.
Bye.